Good afternoon. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you to the measure, dear friends, dear guests, and thank you for being here. Bilbao European Encounters, these the 10th editions we are celebrating, and we are becoming a reference in several matters. So first of all is to speak to the citizens. I would like to thank, first of all, to the City Council and the Mayor for being a part of this event. And also I would like to thank Daniel Inirariti, the Director of Governance. Today we are addressing the use of technology in education. One of our major challenges that we are facing in all the sectors of society. Today we're going to address two issues. The first one is to know whether the digitization is a problem or a solution for these educational challenges. It is a reality, and technology is and has having an impact on education in order to getting to all sectors of society. Through technology, we can get to those who were more isolated, and we can, in that way, encourage an inclusive learning. So students of different socioeconomic realities are able to access to different contents and educators throughout the world. This not only is good for democracy in education, but also it enrich the curriculum, but also a bad use of digitalization tools, the exposition to non-adequate content or disinformation are some of the risk. And also we will address another challenge is the use of the future technologies as the AI. How can we educate the next generation to the use of AI, and how can we train for algorithms? It would be a pleasure to participate on this panel. Technology is a bridge towards a more equal future. It is our responsibility to promote digital solutions to promote this learning in a sustainable way and in line with this Agenda 2030. So thank you again for being here this afternoon. Thank you again. Yours is the floor. So I would like to thank Daniel Inirariti, who is the Director of Governance. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to Bilbao European Encounters once again. Daniel Inirariti is the organizer of these encounters. He is also a great friend. So thank you for being here. We are going to address the major issues that are great challenges for our society. It is a great pleasure to be here for the opening of this new edition of Bilbao Encounters. It is a dear encounter. So in each encounters, we are approaching different reflections on the major challenges of our society. And I personally have to say that this event is very dear because Daniel Linearity is someone I read a lot, and so it's a great pleasure for me to be here this afternoon. So this year, the year is education in a digital environment, a major challenge and of great importance in an ever more connected world that is going to an incredible pace and changing many aspects of our lives. Education is not an exception, and as politicians, we have to work towards digitization if we want to live in modern societies. applying that to the new industrial economic processes and also to universities. It is a challenge, and a challenge we face on a daily basis. What about education in all this? What about individuals in all this? We know that there is a basis where we are building our future. We are training and educating our young people. All the students should have access to the same opportunities and resources, and our methods have to evolve at the same pace to be more inclusive. Therefore, we are facing a crucial moment where we have to assess how the digital tools can enrich the educational process, and at the same time, we have to face the challenges coming out from this process. Pandemic made us look for new tools, but also we saw the differences between those families with resources and those who had scarce resources. So this Congress, it is a wonderful opportunity to share knowledge, discuss ideas, and also be well aware that we have to work hand in hand for a fair education. And these work together, although it seems quite difficult. If we see TV programs, we have to do that, otherwise we're going to fail. And if I may, I would go beyond all that. We have to cultivate our values. Bilbao is a city of values, wants to be a city of values. In the city council, city hall, we approved a chart of values as sacrifice, sharing, living together. Young individuals do not have to sacrifice everything for internet. They have to be proactive, they have to be critical. And also when we talk about relationships, we have to keep the physical contact, we have to talk together. But that's why I think we have to reach a balance between technology and human beings and education. In words of the Professor Marina, we have to recover humanity as an ethical category. AI can bring about speedy answers, but has no empathy. AI is a mean, but for what? What is the end? The end is we have to use it for humanity, responding to different challenges, ethical, pedagogical, and we have to bear in mind inclusion criteria, diversity, participation, or solidarity. Bill Gates said that technology is only a tool. So to motivate the little ones, professors, teachers are the major tools. Daniel also says that AI could be a way of getting to know what citizens want, and we would get several advices. We would have data. Instead of voting, we had those data that made us take decisions. But AI cannot replace democracy because it works much better when there is no ambiguity, when there is no bias or uncertainty. But human beings will work much better in uncertainty environment. AI is good when processing a large amount of data, but not generating new visions. It gets us quite speedy data, but not intelligence. We are unique as humans because we can manage uncertainty. We have a capacity to face singularity, exceptions. And when talking about education, each student is unique. In the words of Daniel, he says that teachers are not giving only tools, but they offer tools to survive among these data worlds. So we are taught to know what we want to find is that what we need. Human intelligence cannot be replaced in the moral judgment, creativity, or empathy. Challenges for teachers is to find balance between automatization and humanity in the educational process. Challenges that are going to be of great interest, and what we are going to address this afternoon. We have the privilege to have Daniel Inirariti, José Antonio Marina, and that they are contributing to the scientific thought, and they will help us to better understand the impact of the digitalization of our future regeneration. And I'm sure that we will be facing interesting reflections. The value is of great importance because here we will have experts, academicians in public policies, and they will help us to give the relevance the education needs. We are always in a transition period. We are keeping the pace, and in this case, this change is real. That's why the approach has to be comprehensive, taking on board the technologies and the classrooms and also the critical spirit of our students. That's why I think that in Bilbao we have been able to go beyond, to have a gesture. And in 2022, we were able to sign the Bilbao Manifesto to give a certain sense to what we think is a smart city at a human scale. So we have to open our minds to reflection. And I'm going to do something I don't like, but I will have to leave this event because in Bilbao there is a peace forum, and we have the victims of terrorism, and we meet twice a year to show our deepest sympathy to those who have suffered in silence and have suffered silence. And I think it is very important for me to be there at 6 this afternoon at 6 p.m. And I'm sorry, but I will have to leave. I leave you with Eider Bilbao, Eider Ununciaga, that will give us, I'm sure, good ideas. It's a pity that the town councils they have not competencies in education, but they will, I'm sure, one day. Thank you for your attention. Good afternoon. Thank you for your words, Mr. Major. It's a great pleasure to be here. Let's kick off. It is a pleasure. It's the second year I have to represent BBK. It has been taking part in that from the very beginning. And we celebrate 3 years the opening of BBK. I'm sure Eider Inunciaga remembers that. But Nora Sarasola, our director of social work, has mentioned it. But for BBK, it's a natural space. It is a space where we'll feel at ease. We use a common language that is to put in line the challenges the people of Vizcaya face. But today I have a harder work, which is to try to sum up the CV of the speakers. Why do we have Google or LinkedIn? We will try to answer to this question. Is digitization an issue or a solution for the educational challenges? I will invite Maria Beunza. She's has got a large experience, and she's a teacher in the University of Havana, and she is a CEO of Human Eye Tech. She's they analyze natural text. So welcome, Maria. But also I welcome Carlos Magro, who is the president of the Asociación Educación Abierta, and he's education advisor. He works in public policies, and he's a member of Education Innovation Camilo José Cela University. Welcome, Carlos. And this panel will be chaired by Eider Inunciar. So whenever you want, use this floor. Dear guests, Maria and Carlos, welcome to this event. It's a great honor to chair this panel this afternoon. Thank you very much. As I say in Basque, in Euskera, it's an honor for me to be here. I guess that she's going to repeat in Spanish this question. I was just saying that 4 million people use internet as students, but 50% of the students have not access to a computer. So we have a lot of data on the digitization impact. But can we measure everything? Is it possible we have more quality-centered issues? How is AI having an impact on our brains? Are the young students learning in the same way? Do we do that in a collaborative way or individually? We have a lot of questions, and I'm sure that both speakers are going to bring about answers. My first question to you is the title of our table. Is digitization a problem, a solution for our major challenges in the digitization of the educational world? This is a more general question, but I guess that what is clear is that a digitization is here, is both a challenge and can be an issue. It's not black and white. So for certain solutions, for certain things it's a solution, and for other things it can be an issue. The bad use of a tool can be a problem. A pen can be used to write, but also we can use it as a weapon. A car, for example, is can be dangerous, but we are not getting rid of our cars. So we have to reach a balance, and it can be a part of a solution, but can also be an issue. My answer is quite general, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you to you all for being here. Maria, thank you for chairing this table, this panel. I would like to point out an idea that when listening to the major, and it's not either a problem or either a solution, has been said by Eider, to look at it in a bipolar way is hindering us in getting out of this dark vicious circle. When we get a new technology, for example, TV, I remember radio or internet, we go back to very similar positions. And it came with my mind when I listened to the measure. It's normal to have different opinions, but we could, if we go to the extremes, we could be in a cyber fetishist position in understanding that technology is a solution for all our issues. And also on the other side, we could have a catastrophic position where we could think everything is bad and technology is bad. And these both stands is a mirror of the one of the other. It's just both are saying technology as something that is given, something that is determinist, and something that is instrumental. We look at the technology as an instrument, but we have to be conscious that technology is not something neutral. It is full of values and assets. Of course, in between these two stands, we have something in the middle, and this is very important in the social sphere, but also educational sphere. I'm not going to go further, and we might elaborate later on this subject, but we have to think it is something very serious. Of course, technology is there and it's in the schools, and we have to demand a greater digital sovereignty. Technology is not something given. We mustn't adapt or refuse it, but it is something that is part of a society, of ourselves as teachers or students. We can mold it. And so a key idea is this idea of, if we go into these antagonic stands and we lose the biases and nuances, we are turning our back to our capacity to decide what technology for what and for what uses. And the only thing we can do is to turn the back on it or to adapt it to our daily life. I may be general, but it's just the beginning. So, entering into more specific topic, you've said that technology is given to us, but during pandemic, technology was a part of our lives, of our schools, and from then onwards, it's just we get this feeling the teachers have to use these technological tools, the digital tools, in order to be in the classrooms. GPT, sorry, maybe it's not the only tool, we have many more, but they seem to be forced to use them. I have two questions in this respect. If the teacher have these technologies, and if they can choose or decide what would be the role played by the teacher, how they can use this technology in the classrooms. And Carlos, maybe as you can say something about that. What are the competences that have to be developed to not have only technology as a mere instrument, but something that could be used for going beyond that? Yours is the floor, Maria. Pandemic has helped us to see that virtuality is an asset. So we are they're seeing us by streaming from Canada, from the States or whatever. And we are close to many households thanks to this virtuality. I guess this is great because there are many educational projects where people learn a language, talking with the elderly in a home in the States, and they are bringing about a service, and they are helpful one another. So we work a lot with what we have co-designed. We always have been working with the educational centers, teaching centers, and the teachers want to get hold of what they have, and they are living in the worlds we are living in a modern world, and they want to use that to work better. Of course, there are the ones who somewhat resist to change. We have to reinvent ourselves. It's a reality. The grandchild, they show the grandparents to use the WhatsApp, for example, or the smartphones. When talking about AI, generative AI and ChatGPT, when we will regulate it, and I'm sure the Europeans were going to be at the head of that. If we regulated it, for example, I remember my son used my 11 years old son used the ChatGPT in a very natural way when the teachers were not aware of this ChatGPT. So there will be things that will be progressing at a great pace. But if we use it for a good thing, or for good things, I get that ethical dilemmas should be at the foundations of all that. If I'm really happy about the AI, is that because we can talk about ethics and about a foundation that is much more important we haven't been talking about until now. We have many values, of course, and I'm sure that we have to think about the good things of AI and its value. So Daniel says we have to be bilingual in technology and humanism, and to say we do not have to polarize everything, we do not have to transform everything in an enemy or a friend. It's not that. The critical spirit, the critical minds, to be using them at the service of knowledge and the service of learning and at the service of the others, why not? So in this respect, we will have to get hold of what is happening. We can turn our back on this technology, or accept it. So the certain constraints of certain topics, it would be okay. We will need a nice environment, a manageable environment, but the excessive constraints or limitations we have about smartphone, yes or not, etc. They are vested in interested in all that. So to ban AI will not be good, and getting used to using it in a good way and not having it as a new god, I think it is something we have to do. We might have certain issues to learn, but if we're talking about education, I guess it is not very good to see that the world cannot be changed without knowing that, and knowing it. And on the basis of my experience, and I'm a teacher in the university, you change from one year to the other. The world changes. You have to readapt your views. Yes, of course, the teaching methodology has evolved, and so we will have to adapt ourselves. Not only the teaching staff, but all the center, and also the students have to adapt themselves. And I think that we always say, well, the education will take care about that, and the teaching staff will care about that. But we all have responsibility in many, many respects. Well, we have to accompany, there is less pure didactics, for example. What can we take to the exam? Everything, computer, smartphone, whatever, notes. We don't like exams. And I tell them, ask to GPT about the competences and the skills you will develop. And I want to have what GPT has said, and what do you think about that? And what is your real engagement about what you do? So we have to think. Yeah, they say we have to think, and I say yes, you have to think. Carlos uses the floor. Yeah. We are all living a quite paradoxical world, because we are seeing many investments done in infrastructures and culture, and we have a curriculum, and we have a certain number of competences we have to fulfill. The administration is also sending quite weird messages. We are going to ban smartphones, for example. This morning, we listened in the news something we knew was going to happen. The education center with the label without screens, no screens, or soft schools. I'm not really sure what it means. Oh, in a post-digital world where we cannot really differentiate where we are, because we have this life, we have this issue. So a good headline would be, we need more technology in schools. This does not mean we need more chat GTP, but more technology, but smart technology in schools. The digital skill is a key skill nowadays. But we thought that at the beginning we said, but they're native digitals. But a lot of staff hasn't been trained, and some teachers are not able to be critical with what has happened. When we see these skills and we know what are the skills, we have to be critical. We have to be critical regarding technology. We have to know what technology means, but this does not mean that we are denying technology, because we cannot take it out of our lives. We have to be, as citizens, we have to be able to master the use of the technology. When I just mentioned before that we have to have this digital sovereignty and decision-making capacity, is not to say, well, I want this app or the other app or whatever, is because we have to have citizens that ask to the administration to invest in technologies, or to have a certain number of characteristics, and make sure also they are working for the common good, because currently the technologies we have to use, because we cannot live without them, are defined with as commodities. And so we need digital sovereignty, but at all the stages, at school, but also in the administration. And when talking about the skills of the students, a teacher can decide if he wants to use technology in its classroom. There are many opportunities or different ways of teaching, whatever, using a software, a hardware, but what the teacher cannot do is to renounce to train in digital competencies and skills. The instrumentals are not as important, but as adults, we are receiving these so different messages. Administration is going to buy screens. Some schools say we have to ban screens. And when talking about health, they say that technologies are a cause of stress or whatever. And what are the consequences? Addictions and all that. When we are in this context, and when we are responsible, we get worried. When we look at it from the educational sphere, we realize that technology is not this big issue that is changing our way of thinking or is causing a certain number of pathology. It is a resource. It is a skill we have to develop. The pedagogical look is much more interesting. In this respect, these two stands are going to generate two different youth people. We have the look of the health. Health is important, and we see that our children are addicted and they are just not controlling it. They are very passive, and this entails a certain number of problems. But if we look at it from the other standpoint, from the pedagogical standpoint, these teenagers are not passive. We know that the teenagers are active, they are making decisions, they know when they have to use technology, and they do things and they can collaborate. So we have two stands different about what teenagers we have in France. And they're very different. And the teachers have to deal with that difference. They have to decide if they want to have a stand a bit more on the educational side or looking at it from the fear standpoint. And but I think it would be teenagers that are depending, and they are depending upon the smartphones, and they have a lot of issues. Yes, Carlos, you have pointed out the role of the families, and also we're talking about the educational centers, we're talking about the teaching staff and the tools within those spaces, but of course within the educational community in its widest sense. We have to be able to integrate these tools in the development of their skills. As the major has said, it has to be a integral approach. You have also pointed out at ethics, the age of access. Kids are dependent. We have to care about them. The way of learning, ChatGPT, the intelligence generating data, the students have to be able to identify those nuances with a critical look, and we are well aware of this event, that there are negative connotations in the technology, in the social media, in spaces that are very wide. What can we do in the face of that? Are you aware of specific practices that can be replicated in other countries? Because we are followed by people on streaming. How can we include the ethical worries in this digital transformation in the educational sphere, and some good practices that could be put on the table? There are a lot of good practices, and this morning I had a meeting with people of the European Commission with a new regulation for the AI. That establishes a certain number of risk levels. We're working with minors, and this is not very nice for those who use it, because of course the professionals have some editors. 6 is Carlota and 7 is Aguzane, for example. It is not very nice, but this is good because we are caring about
antes de tener nuestros
privacy.
propios algoritmos,
Before
no de una multinacional,
getting
en el mundo
our
educativo es
own
verdad que
algorithm,
hay un pequeño así con el mundo empresarial, ¿no? Hay una cosa que subyace, pero antes de utilizar los algoritmos nosotros habíamos planteado un código de conducta ética y ética. Es decir, habíamos explicado el por qué y el para qué se debería utilizar esto y qué cosas no eran aceptables. Evidentemente no tienes una mano infinita para llegar a todo aquel que todo lo vaya a utilizar, ¿no? Pero estás ya preavisando de que esto es una tecnología al servicio del desarrollo. ¿Los sesgos se pueden controlar? Sí. Otra cosa es en la generativa. ¿Cuánto puedes evitar que alucine? Este es el término que se utiliza para el que no está al día. ¿Cuánto puedes evitar que alucine algo que casa cosas, vamos a decir, y escupe? Porque está programado para que
TikTok. Everything can be done, and do we have to bear in mind that, of course, do we have measures to avoid this kind of situation? This critical spirit is something that can be very relevant. And is this important and relevant? Yes, this is my opinion, of course. So in this case, questions as the digital divide could have an impact. So the critical spirit is worked outside the classrooms. This critical space, the digital divide can be greater, and the negative impact also is greater, as the access to the communication. And when we live in a community and with a certain cultural level, it will have many perspectives. And of course, it is true that digital gives us access to many things, and not everybody has access to digital. In other circumstances could be the same. We have to defend the same things all together. We have to preach with example to bring about our idea. So can we talk about the ethical consequences or implications of all that? Well, it's not an easy question. I'm not sure about how to answer. About the digital divides, we have been seeing that technologies are increasing the divide, social divide, I would say. It is happening, sadly. Our blindness, because the digital divide is there when not of access but of use, as Maria has mentioned. When we have an economic divide or whatever, is going to have an impact on, of course, the access to technology. With AI, is going to be quite the same. We are increasing a bit more this divide. When I say we need more technology at school, it's not only having more hardware, but it is also a matter of fairness. It is the only place where we can ensure that all the students, the teenagers, can develop a critical capacity. So, of course, we have to look critically to things. We have to question ourselves. And the only place to do that is school. And so we do not need this school of technology. We need a school that is at the heart of technology, I guess. So from the ethical point of view, there are two ways of looking at that. My impression, with José Antonio and with Daniel, we will also talk about that. We are worried about the human-man question, or the human touch. Are they going to replace humans? These technologies are going to change. They're going to change us. Well, and maybe afterwards we can talk about that. This question that is closely linked to ethics is going to set aside a certain number of issues that are important. And we know that AI is having a brutal impact on environment. It is not sustainable. Far from that, when we talk about personalized chatbots, the way of be nearer to the students with this chat box in the schools, university. We will have to see in the long run when these chat boxes, there will be so many that Microsoft has declined or has refused the environment commitment. The consumption is too high, they're not going to be able to meet the requirements in matters of environment. Internet has internet is full of, well, I don't like to use the English word, shit is full of shit. Now internet is full of too many things. It has degraded the quality. The space we had before internet was a bit more friendly, collaborative, and where we had a lot of information, not only in the office, but also spaces that was devoted to high quality information. But since 2 years, we have too many contents that are, and in the short term, we won't be able to manage all this information. So I think we have to think about this. I'm sure you have a lot of information about that. I'm sure that afterwards we will talk about that. But what can we do with that in the schools? I go back to what I've said before. We have to put at the heart of our topics what is happening with AI. It is the use is not as important. So some teachers can use it for one thing, the students for other things, but the most important is the environmental issue. And also the fact that we are running out of space in internet. We also could talk about intellectual property. Of course, there is an issue of intellectual property in this respect. The universities are using a certain number of tools to see if the texts that are presented are true. So each time the works are presented on internet, there are intellectual property issues because this company is going to have access to those texts. And so the students have to be as critical as possible in order to be able to live and move in this world, in this environment, in this digital world. We have to get hold of many tools. It's not only a question of adaptation or denial. I deny, I look, I turn my back on that, or who are the ones that are checking, the thousands of workers that are checking if everything is working all right? If, of course, there are many other issues that are important, and we have to elaborate on that. We might rethink about the curriculums, the spaces, the time, the teaching, other staffs, and all that. We have to leave some time for the Q&A session. But before closing this first time, could you talk about a specific initiative, successful one, to say, well, this initiative can be interesting, and a center or a public policy, something, an example that could be positive to support this educational center? Well, I have many examples. We can talk about good practices, but we talk more about the problems than the good practices, sadly. So from teaching centers, we are very much present in North America as well. We are They are working with the different competences and skills to rely on what is relevant. There is a teaching staff that is willing to work, and that is testing, and that is bringing about a certain number of rules to make it better, and they are experimenting. It's not only theoretical. So we have many examples on the web. And socio-emotional competence in Colombia, there is a regulation. I think it was the first country, the first one, with a law about learning throughout life, ongoing learning. And in some places, we are going to the socio-emotional side. We have to be more human. We have to vindicate what is truly human. And they are having very interesting initiatives of public-private partnership. I'm talking about other countries, of course, and not. And in Colombia, they're doing many, many nice things. In Peru, I'm aware of that. And I think we can have very good practices that are opening the door to regulation, and that are closely linked to the teaching community, involving parents, centers, and the institutional systems, and the political sphere, getting to projects in the public system. We get the magic word pilot project. So we have very interesting pilot projects and very good practices. So you can leave us the web page. I'm not very good at that. I'm sorry. Maria is it's better than myself in this respect. When we talk about teaching community, and we think that it is quite traditional, but I have to say it's not. It is a leader in this respect, and what I see is a double pace or speed. We can see a certain group of entities that are a bit outside the school, that are offering services that are based on services built upon the AI. Of course, and many of them have a great capacity to talk with you and understand. For example, in a sphere which is very important, and the administration should be a leader in that, is orientation, academic orientation, professional orientation, whatever. Orientation and advisors are a key in high school, or as there is not enough staff, this would be good. There are many initiatives that are going that way. I think that they are doing that in the margin, that they're doing that outside, but this helps a lot. But within the school, the classroom, there are many teachers that are quite busy. They are overloaded with work, but others, but others are doing things. But this is, once again, something that happens a lot in education. That education sometimes is inside the walls of the classroom, except those teaching centers that have capacity to take it to another level, the upper level. Sometimes we get teachers that are doing innovation in an isolated way, but they're not generating a culture in the center or outside the center. And of course, there are nuances. And the teaching community in Spain is very active. But if we go to Latin America, of course, they are very active, and I have to say that once more, what really concerns me, I came dressed in white. I do not want to be too black, but what concerns me is that we don't have on the agenda what is very important is not only a matter of showing the good examples of use, but also we have to talk about the development of this capacity. We are lagging behind, and of course we have to act swiftly. This is much more pressing. The students use technology, parents as well, but I think we have to give priority to projects in which are at the center of the whole center, not only philosophy or math or whatever, where we have the questions of digital competences from the standpoint of critical capacity. So thank you. I think now we can give the floor for the questions. We have 10 more minutes. I'm sure you have questions. There is a microphone. There's someone at the back of the room. Thank you. Thank you for both. Thank you to both members of the panels. I will go back. I was students in the 70s, but now the speed is such that it would be very difficult to get on the train of these new technologies. How can we bridge the gap? Because we have on board the students now, but how can we train the teachers from those years, the 70s? We have the Villers-Parasilo and the theory of the ensembles and the dynamics of groups, but we did not have time to realize where we really were. And not long after, we got new regulations that changed the competences and skills and other elements you have mentioned. Looking back, it is a cruising speed, but I haven't been really able to use the right competences to be a teacher. I've been working in formal education, and also I've been in non-formal education, but I have the same feeling of lack of competence. And did we bridge the gap? We did it with the ongoing training, and but where this got us, we talked about the difficulties in the teaching among the teaching staff, but also the digital divides and other divides are going to increase the difficulties to keep up the pace. It is like a track that is very demanding. It's just like a race. We have to distribute the load, and I think it is very difficult in both informal and non-formal environment, when in non-formal environment we do and we can. So in this respect, I would like to have your opinion on that. Why there is a huge acceleration, and there is it is quite relevant, and there is also a really high level, a high demanding level of competences. Sometimes it would, of course, sometimes you need to get some time to think about that, but we haven't got that time. So what is the solution to that? Of course, when we won't have these regulations take time, so I guess that we will have to, and the factor of learning is all self-regulated. I think that each one has to find its way of learning, but the system should make it easier, and training should be updated, but each one or each individual will choose what is the level of requirement. I think because we are still paid by hours, and the agreements are paid by hours, so this is the way it is. I'm afraid it is quite difficult. I'm not sure there is a solution. I'm not able to give you an answer. I have no solution. I'm sorry, but this is very, very fast. It's going very fast. We can deny some things or whatever. We can say, well, we need to stop and we need some time, but it's going very fast. But everything is going fast. Kids are going fast. I remember a teacher that told me, Maria, what is great when you get to university is that they always have 18 years, but 18 years is nothing to do with your years because you're getting older. But anyway, if you want to keep up with this task, and you have to assume that. So I'm not an expert. I'm sorry, I'm not an expert in regulation, in laws. Anyway, of course, it has always been a very difficult profession, and throughout the years, this is the most complex profession, and it is very has a high ingredient of technicity, but it's also closely linked to emotions, and because we're dealing with individuals and human beings, and so it is full of technicity, but also with a certain number of capacities that we have to master. And what can we do? I don't know. We lack resources. The Basque country is the region that invests the most in education, double than in Madrid community, for example. But this feeling of not being able to do things and this high pressure is closely linked to the lack of resources, because with this low birth rate, I'm afraid things are not going to be better. So I'm not facing the treasury minister, but I can say that. But of course, we also have to change paradigm. We have to change our mindset. We always have been thinking about this profession as something individual, because the teacher is on his own in his classroom, whatever. But I think we are well aware of that. But now we have to think about the fact that it is a team work. It is also a collaborative profession. We have to talk with our colleagues, and we have to change the classroom dynamics. It sounds very well, but this entails that profession cannot be upheld by only one individual in the classroom, for example. It is very difficult because to the technical capacity we have to have training and upskilling. We also have to know that this is going to be linked with many fields, psychology, whatever. And so the only way to have all these assets, the digital skill, for example, it is a collaborative profession. We have to work in teams, and also we will have to slow down. We need to have a legislative slowdown, because we have many acts and regulations, but they're all the same. They are repeating themselves since the LOCSE, from this regulation with some nuances, they are the same. They are all the same act. We need them, of course, because this is a field that has to be regulated, but they are not very different. And I think that we have laws and legislation that are not coping with the social or learning complexity. The legislation is not coping with the complexity we're facing. We have to slow down, and we have to be able to interpret those legislations, and we have different interpretations. When we are in a classroom, we know that there are different sides to the legislations. We can interpret them, and in this respect, we have to be able, as an education community, to go to the essential. It is not going back to the maths. It is quite tempting, but it is not that. The essential is to understand what it is important of the compulsory education. I'm not talking about the later stages in education, but the 10, 12 years of the compulsory education. We have to know what we're doing. Why do we need secondary education? What it is important? What do they have to learn? What are those competences and skills they have to learn to be able to interpret the world? Because we spend all those years for those young people to be able to thrive, to understand the world and to interpret the world. And I think now, currently, we're not giving them the resources they need to better understand in a critical way their technological environment and to better understand the world they live in. So we have to understand that it is a complex profession. We have to think about the ongoing and occupational training. We will also have to pay more, and we need more investments. This is going to be good, and we also have to be able to focus on what is important. Also, to go into a reflection, we have to reflect about the sense of what they're doing and in a deeper way, and to be able to translate all that to the day-to-day life, to the classrooms and the issues we encounter with inspections. We have we have room to improvement, and we have to go to the essential. We spent 10, 12 years in the compulsory education, so that's quite a lot. So we get the last question. I'm sorry, I have to leave, so can we have the microphone? About the teaching staff training. It is difficult, and even more when ministry asked me for have a white paper of education. We talked about the system of training and ongoing training for teaching staff. It is not left at random, because we had to talk about the hours of training for teaching staff, and there were great differences between the centers. We had really great experts, because they had to teach. That is very difficult. And this white paper was left in a drawer, and this is a pity. This is essential, because in this world, the world changes, and so if someone has to be 30 years in a profession, as if there's no training, it is in no use. We have to do that. And also, as has been mentioned, I know that both speakers have great experiences. We talk about innovation a lot, but when we go to the classroom, the teachers are really fed up. They are not really, they are not following the changes because there are many changes that haven't been checked or tested, and we do not know if those changes are good. And on behalf of the European Union, there's the number of teachers was not important, but it is of great importance. But later on, they said, yes, it is important to have a certain number of ratio student teachers, for example. And after they said, well, you have to spend money in screens or tablets, but this has been of no use at all because we have used only the tablets to have access to information, but the information is there. It's very difficult to digest, and they haven't been entering in the true learning process. So we have been using the new technology in a bad way. Don't you think we should be more cautious when saying we have to innovate? For innovation to be of use, we have to assess it. Don't you think it should be like that? Yes, I fully agree with you. I've been dealing with innovation for quite a while. Innovation, only for information, innovation is no good. So in many cases, we be dealing with innovations. I will talk about a very specific innovation. We have been talking about system of innovation that offers a suggestion for the individual intervention. We have two pillars, ethics and the scientific evidence. All the compilation of scientific evidences with university and different bodies, interventions as such, has got a scientific evidence was quite limited in terms of social emotional competence, empathy. I'm not talking about cognition or other things. So there are very little scientific evidences. And the one we have, this is my own nuance, the one we have is in context. So scientific evidence is very difficult because the field where we have the scientific evidence is a very controlled one. It is another issue of science to comply with methodology. You have to do something that cannot be extrapolated. So there is very little evidence, and some we have them, but in very, very specific environments and projects. So it is very complex to test and to measure. Well, I always talk with a colleague which works with PISA and when we're going to have a way of measuring these competences. When will we have this way of measuring? And he said, well, you're crazy. And later on, they have their own system to evaluate the kids, and they have a questionnaire with 3 items, and they measure as they measure. Well, this is what I want to say. The evidence is very complicated, but it's also very closely linked with innovation. We live that. When every day they say we need more evidence and scientific evidence. Of course, we have a scientific evidence and we have to work with those who design with us. Otherwise, we won't have empirical evidence. We have very complex appreciation with 8 different pillars. It's very complex, but how can we have a scientific evidence if we do not innovate or experiment? So this is like a vicious circle more than virtuous. And also, in all these practices that we do, scientific evidence does not exist. So some we ask evidences and the others not. We do not. So no one is fully pleased with education. I've got a friend like he's a PhD in education. He says this science does not progress. We are never satisfied. There's not enough evidence. Why? Because we work with people, and thanks God, we are full of nuances, we are human, we progress, and dynamics are changing a lot. And well, I'm not sure it's a good answer, but it is subject to many interpretations. Well, I guess you're going to continue talking about that. I'm not talking about teaching, teachers training. It would be another topic for another day. I guess if we have less hours, it would be better, because those many hours, we need more time to deal with all these training aspects. OECD said that from a level of investment, it wasn't that important, but investment is important, and training is a major matter. If you talk about technological innovation, there are many seniors administration. The first one, School 2.0, but also we have another exercises, and they are doing that in the States and in all the world. It is much easier to think that buying technology is to innovate. Technology is equal to improvement, and you have to think what I have to do to improve things. And of course, it is easy to buy. I can go to a supplier and have all kind of screens, computers, and everything. And then afterwards, the teacher will have to find their way. And this has been the case. And we are a country that knows how to build and to buy. And I'm a bit worried about that. Yeah. Research, as Maria has just mentioned, is it something that has no evidence? We have people that have been working in this field for many years, but what important is mediation, the pedagogical orientation, and the important is what you do with this technology, not the technology as such. And with the problem is not the technology, yes or no. What can we do for what, with what ends and mean? And that's where we have pedagogy. And it is something that we haven't explained in detail. We think that buying is enough. And so we have had many seniors in all that, but of course, with AI, it's the same. The technology is not a problem as such. It is the users we give it to this innovation. Other innovations in education, we have many. The great advances of the many teaching didactics, mathematics, history, all that has evolved throughout the years. All that can be assessed in the same way we assess drugs, for example. We need to have evidence. One of the great complexity. I'm sorry. We do not hear the question. I have to use microphone for interpretation. I'm sorry. This is the question. Why do we have to polarize everything? We have to be a bit more bilingual. My friend Maya Amaya Arroyo insists that what is important is the complementarity of the means. Everything, all the rest is absurd. And I think it's a bit more in our minds when we have to rationalize the narratives and the reality that is happening in the classrooms. Yesterday I was talking with a journalist. Do we have to go back to the pen? But the pen has been always used. The pen hasn't been out the classrooms whenever. But what I wanted to say is that in education terms, which is very extended, it is very difficult to accept the fact that we have to get to evidences. But this is not a field where you cannot have an impact on the laboratory. What has worked for you, Antonio, is maybe not going to work tomorrow with another group. It depends upon the people. So I think we have to be cautious. We also have to say that there is an important movement in Europe, not only in Europe, that has been happening in the EU. We have many people working in the technology. Is the technology or teaching technology of use? We are trying to do that. There are many companies that are trying to offer a certain number of certifications in order to see how we can use things, to say, well, this is working, this has been approved, and this is working. And so this is an important issue that is on the table. What is going to be the solution? We're not quite sure. We have to appreciate, we have to assess this technology. This is not done. We have too many technologies, and we need to have a guide. We need to make decisions of teachers, of families. We need to have something. We need to have results. It is not only the scientific evidence, but also something that is much more adapted to the classroom. Thank you. I'm sorry we have been a bit too long, but this discussion has been of great interest. Thank you to you both. Thank you for addressing those aspects, the poles and all the extremes and all the rights aspects. So thank you to Governance and to Rebecca Kuna for inviting the City Council to this 11th edition of Bilbao Encounters. Thank you to Mikel as well. Thank you very much for having me on board. I hope that you will have been learning a lot. And thank you again. Thank you.
So, good afternoon. Welcome back. We've had a very interesting first panel debate, and now we've got a very interesting second panel debate. We're excited to hear this dialogue, which is going to be about the education of intelligence in a digital environment. So, the challenge that we're all facing is trying to redefine what being intelligent actually means. I'm not going to be trying to answer that question, but I think Daniel Arati may be able to do that. He is many things, but he's also the chair of our BBK Gunea, the think tank focusing on the theory of democracy. He's a director of the chair on democracy at the European Institute in Valencia. Thank you very much, Daniel. We're delighted to have you here. We have also with us Jose Antonio Marina, who, while he was, in fact, studying philosophy in Madrid, founded 3 magazines or journals, Aquinas, Cuadernos de Arte y Pensamiento Acento. He's a chair in philosophy. And we also have with us today, and we're very glad to have her with us, because I think she has a lot to offer to this table debate. We have Eider Bilbao, who is a councillor for education at the Bilbao City Council. So the floor is all yours. Thank you very much. I have some notes, but I think I'm going to have to change them because of what was said during the last panel debate, which was very interesting. So I'm going to try to update them. First of all, thank you very much. Thank you to the organisers. Thank you for having invited me to participate in this panel. I'm delighted to be here. It's a pleasure and an honour to be here with Danielle and Jose Antonio. I'd also like to thank all of you who are here Thursday evening here to talk about digital intelligence. It's great to have you all here. So we live in nervous societies. They're impatient. We haven't hardly any time at all to think. We want everything immediately, right now. And calmness and frustration get confused sometimes. And I would like to talk about calmness, taking time to talk calmly about problems, to find solutions, and to find arguments that will convince people without imposing any ideas on anyone. Because in the current scenario of polarization, we all lose. We need dialogue. We need debate. We need reflection. This is what we're being offered here today. And only through dialogue, debate, and reflection will we be able to rise to the challenges that we are faced with. And as Daniel says, that are in danger of becoming unsolvable. And also we are exposed to the threat of manipulation. If we take decisions without knowing what will happen, then we are exposing ourselves to be manipulated. So I will be very, very brief because we're all here really to talk about, to listen to Daniel and Jose Antonio. And in fact, I'm here as well. They are the 2 main figures in this panel debate. But I'd just like to say a few things. I am the Councillor for Education at the Bilbao City Council. And I'm convinced that everything has to do with the policies and the politics of small things, the local, the everyday things, the specific things. And the education of intelligence in a digital environment as well. No one should doubt that education plays a key role in the education of societies. But on all too many occasions, we're just focusing on our heads without thinking about our hearts or our hands. And only, and we tend to focus more on individual performance rather than teamwork and community work. And all of this is in fact affecting the way we live, the way we relate to each other, and the way we think. We need an education that will light the spark of curiosity. What we have to do is not just add another app, but we have to reboot our entire operating system. Our life and the digital world is having a major effect on all areas of our lives. It was unimaginable just a few years ago. We also have to take into account the environmental divide, the social divide, and of course the digital divide. But everything has to do with the local environment, from the most local environment, which is the town, city, or municipality. And we would like to contribute in two ways to all of this. We would like to guarantee the right to an inclusive education. We want to foster and to strengthen education as a common good. Bilbao's commitment to the education of its citizens is nothing new. We've taken time to carry out an assessment. We have talked to the community to understand what they think, what we need to make Bilbao an educational city. And on the basis of all that, we will be drawing up a roadmap from here until 2030. Because whatever the challenge is, the response is always in the community. We're talking about over 25,000 students who are currently in education, spread around 113 different schools in Bilbao with more than 4,000 teachers. So it's an educational community which is both large and diverse, because Bilbao is a diverse city, and that's great. And we have heard that we have many, many challenges that we need to face. The fact that education is free for children aged 0 to 3 has increased the number of children enrolled in this stage. We have 2,000 new babies born every year, and it's in the very early years that children will lay the groundwork for their ability to learn throughout the rest of their lives, and this is absolutely essential for their health and well-being, especially for those children who come from more disadvantaged families. For these children, and for all children, schools are a major pillar of our educational system. We have many schools which have a lot of value for our society. Some of them are in very old buildings, some of them lack facilities. But we have an educational community which is diverse, which includes also families. And the parents' associations are also a key pillar in all of this. I'd just like to talk a little bit about one of the challenges that we have. We're talking about students who are particularly vulnerable. Everybody knows that academic performance is affected by different social factors. And the challenge of learning outcomes has a major impact on people's and young children's job possibilities in the future. We also have a challenge of equality and school segregation. Technology forms an intrinsic part of the lives of teenagers who have been socialized on the internet and the social media with many, many different applications in a very intensive way, and that can have a serious interference in their personal development and everyday lives. We no longer live on the earth and in heaven. We live on Google Earth and we live in the clouds. She's now speaking in Basque and reading very quickly, and we will resume the interpreting when she turns back into Spanish. So we don't have very many local competences, but we do want to work at the local level. And what we're doing at this moment in time is working on the complementarity and co-responsibility with other institutions and other stakeholders in order to bring about a multiplying effect, which will go beyond just sporadic activities, placing the focus on equality, inclusion, with public schools at the center of everything to make sure that those who need the most have their needs covered. We want to put an end to the repetitive cycle of poverty through education. Let me give you two examples. The creation of new places at school from 0 to 3 years of age. Early education is a key way of overcoming social exclusion. And we have another project, which is the Social Educational Support Project, to make sure that we leave no one behind. We're talking about educational support programs, which go beyond teaching hours, provided by social entities in collaboration with schools and organized in small groups with a very heavy emphasis on individual tutoring. And let me just finish because I know you're all here to listen to Danielle and Jose Antonio. And I will, as I said, I'll finish there. So I will just pass the floor to you, Danielle. Oh, sorry. Before, can I just say something? Ada is right in that compulsory education, the fact that it's not unified is terrible. Years ago, I carried out a project with my team and where we saw that there were 4 problems, major problems in the educational field. And they were school dropout, violence in classrooms, risk behaviors, and the link between the education system and the labor system. Nobody took any notice of us, and I expect that project is probably just shut up in a drawer somewhere. No one's really read it. But I think that it's an idea that we all need to start taking notice of. The municipal level is a level at which we need to solve many of the problems facing us. So now I think, we're talking about Bilbao here, so I'm sure if anyone can do it, they can. Now, in the previous panel debate, some things were said that are related to this. Our relationship with the digital world can be described as a hysterical relationship. We go from phobia to panic and back again in the blink of an eye. We think, oh, this is going to replace us. It's terrible. It's awful. And then we think, oh, right, well, here we are. We're going to be great. We're just going to be able to retire and the robots are going to serve us. And in fact, when we're talking about education, I've been thinking that what we needed to do was to get tablets in the classroom and all the children should have tablets. And now the solution seems to be to take digital technology out of the classroom. And in fact, as we've heard, educational problems need educational solutions. Technology can be part of this educational solution, but a technological solution by itself isn't really a solution. Let me just talk a little bit about technology in general and the nature of technology before we just talk about education and teaching. In general terms, we can think about technology in 3 different ways. So we can have techno-solutionism, we have techno-neutralism, and one would be techno-conditionality. I've invented these terms, by the way. So techno-solutionism, what does that mean? Well, it's just someone who thinks that technology is going to solve all our problems. There's an illustrative example that I'd like to share with you. When someone went to appear towards the Senate, and he appeared in the Senate in the United States, and he was there to talk about hate speech, etc. And this gentleman said, "We don't have a solution for this problem, but don't worry, AI will sort it out," because it was a technological solution. But if you talk about hate speech and information and misinformation, it has to do much more with politics and information. It's not really technological. It's not a technological problem, so it doesn't really need a technological solution. Are we going to have AI that's going to be able to distinguish between information that's true and information that's false? It doesn't seem very likely. So my first thesis may seem obvious, that educational problems need educational solutions. So the second possibility. This is techno-neutralism, textual neutrality. Technological is neutral and it just depends on how it's used. Weapons don't kill. People are killed by people with weapons, by other people, not by weapons themselves. The radio can be used for many different reasons and for many different purposes. And it's true, but it's not enough, I don't think, because technology can be used in one way or another. That's true. But there's something in the nature of technology which conditions the possibility for its use. So it facilitates some uses and makes other uses more difficult. So for example, so let's go back to weapons. In the US, the fact that there were so many weapons per inhabitant, whether or not they use them doesn't matter, regardless of whether or not they use them. Just that very fact just tells us a lot about what sort of society they have there. The idea that they have about the defense, fear of others, the lack of trust in the state. So in relation to digital technology, it's a very particular type of technology. And it establishes a sort of different kind of relationship with the world, relationship with us, which makes some things easier and some things more difficult. For example, the idea that knowledge is a question of access. No, Google knows everything these days. So we've gotten used to thinking that knowledge, it doesn't really need to be, it doesn't require any kind of personal effort, critical effort. It's just there, it's accessible. We have access to it, we have it. And then the lack of reflection. We're not aware, I think Carlos said this before, we're not really aware to what extent we actually live in a digital environment and not. Where are we? Is this analog or is this digital? Well, it depends. So many things that we see are digital technologies, but they're ubiquitous, but they're silent, they're hidden, they're not evident. So this makes it easy to have a kind of behavior, and of course I'm talking about this in general, but it's like technological sleepwalking. So we're wandering around the place like sleepwalkers, using technology in different ways, and we're not really aware of it. We don't question it when we should be questioning. We don't realize their scope. So it's this lack of reflection makes us unaware of the technological dimension of what we're doing and how it affects the way we behave. We're not aware of this. Let me just give you a banal example. Are we aware? We're not aware, I don't think, of how our ability to memorize things have changed. How many telephone numbers do you know by heart? I just know my own one because I have to tell people every now and then, but I don't know any other telephone number at all. I haven't memorized any other telephone number. So I have an extreme risk of actually losing my memory because we externalize our memory. And that's really quite alarming. Then we have biased algorithms, etc. We've talked a little bit about this already, right? I'd like to give you an example about reading, because I think this is the key educational act. You have to learn to read. That's basically what you do when you go to school. You learn to read. It's one of the main key competencies that you acquire. Now, before the digital world, what was reading like? How did we read? Reading a book, reading a long text. It makes it it's interesting for a number of different reasons. Why? Well, because it's an act of patience. You buy a book, it costs money, you start on page 1. Maybe, I don't know, in the first 3 pages, maybe they're just talking about, I don't know, some kind of sponge cake, and it's not really very interesting. I'm talking about a book by Proust here. But a digital reader would have just abandoned this on the 2nd page, a modern day reader. This is talking about sponge cake. What are we talking about? We're talking about a Madeleine here. This is ridiculous. You just generally tend to jump from one to the other. It doesn't capture your interest immediately. So there's kind of a very peculiar type of submission of the reader. But there's also a kind of sovereignty of the lector, of the reader, because they can go backwards if they want to. They can choose their own pace, the pace at which they read. And then you can also have a second reading, so reading a book for a second time. Faust, in a prologue that he wrote, says that a theatre director looks at the audience coming into the room and he says, "Oh, they've read so much that they scare me. People who've read a lot, they scare me." And that one of the effects of the invention of the printing press was the figure of a reader, without which democracy wouldn't be possible. Rather than just having people preaching scriptures, people could actually start reading the Bible for themselves. That's a very powerful development. So the question is, rather than becoming a passive subject who just needs to, listen to the rhapsody or the preacher at church, for example, we now become an active subject. They read the Bible for themselves. So digital reading, which we all do, it's not just the young generation. Digital reading is just nervous. It jumps around the place. It hops everywhere. There's a lot of links. It's very chaotic. So, as Maria proposed before, rather than being binary, what I propose is that we need to think about for what kind of things is it better to have digital reading, for what kind of things it's better to have analog reading. For exchanging ideas, access to information, maybe the digital environment will be better because it's, chaotic. But for other things, classic book may be better. The analog world may be better. Being patient, being slow, thinking about things. I think that would really help us to maybe think about a possible solution here. A combination of both worlds, maybe not just one or the other. Is it my turn? I remember here a long time ago, many years ago, I listened to a political scientist, Homela Dixon, saying, our problem is whether or not we're going to be able to generate the talent we need to solve the problems that are going to come. And in the educational world, we're not generating that talent. At this moment in time, I think the most complex issue is that we don't really know what to do with education. I've been thinking about it for the last 5 years. And everything that's being done in the world, in the field of education, and it's awful. Nobody knows what they're doing. PISA doesn't know what they're doing because when a measurement becomes an aim, an objective, it's no longer a measure. Now everyone's thinking about not thinking about, oh, how are we going to educate our young people? Think about, oh, what PISA score are we going to get? So that's been twisted, if you like. Education, it's always gone behind, lagged behind technique. And when I'm talking about technique, I'm talking about tools, instruments. An instrument can be a physical or a mental tool that enables us to do things that we wouldn't be able to do without the tool or the instrument. Physical tools help us to do physical things, and mental tools increase our capacity to think about certain things. Mental tools, for example, what do we have? We have writing. When writing appeared, Socrates, in one of Plato's dialogues, said he didn't trust books. Because he said that if books existed, then we were going to lose our memories. Because if we've got the knowledge in the books, then why should we hold it in our minds, in our memory? Another mental tool has been the algebraic language. Until that was invented, we couldn't do certain things. Another mental tool was musical notation. Beethoven wouldn't have been able to compose unless he'd had the musical notation system. And another mental tool, well, is the entire digital system. The digital tool is a mental tool. We need to learn to use it like everything else. It's a tool because it expands the scope of our thinking. we can think about things and think of things that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise. I confess that I love the digital world. But it's mainly because it's a coincidence, really. When I was 17 years old, in 1956, I'm sorry, Danielle, but that's at least the one advantage I have over you, is that of age. Our mathematical teacher, our maths teacher, came one day and said, in the United States, they've invented a really funny word or term, it's artificial intelligence. And then, in fact, I learned a little bit later on where that word or that term had first been said or used. And I have followed the development of AI since then. It's been like a roller coaster. There have been moments in which everything was very hopeful. Everything's going to be solved with it. We've had very long periods of people thinking, bah, it's absolutely useless. And now we're coming out of the digital winter, if you like. Things are going very, very quickly for a very strange thing. And that's because the AI systems didn't work, because what we were thinking before was that a machine needed to follow a strong logical systems, and the stronger they were, the better the AI was going to work. That was wrong. We realized that that was wrong because the machines just got stuck. And we got out of that when people realized it's not about logic, it's about statistics. And that's when everything's really taken off. But I still remember my teachers at the beginning. They were the ones who, we're talking about Alan Newell and Herbert Simon, and both said the same thing. And I think this really helps us to see that if we don't really understand what AI is, then we're not going to know where it can fit into our lives. They defined intelligence as the ability to find solutions in order to get an end. That's not something to do, is nothing to do with intelligence. That's decided by somebody else. What the end, the means to an end. Now, that was a very dangerous operation, and that was to take the ends out of the field of intelligence and turn intelligence just into an instrument to find out what means we had to use to get to an end. So in that tradition, we had Myron Minsky, Pierre Jetty wanted to see how AI was working and how children's intelligence worked. And then Tim Beverly, when he invented the web, we thought that was going to be the political social revolution to end all revolutions, but it wasn't. We got it wrong again. Because as Daniel said, and Carlos said before, we got it wrong. So we had this potentially magnificent system, but it's deteriorated. So what we have to start to do and to see, and from an educational point of view, I think this is important. The aim is, first of all, we need to learn how to use this tool, this mental tool, because it's very useful. So let's use it properly. Let's learn to use it properly. We're not using it properly at the moment. For example, giving children tablets to use in the classroom it was ridiculous because we didn't really know what they were going to use them for. And so we just used it to access information. But the problem that children have isn't that they can't access the information. That problem's been solved elsewhere. So do you remember, as Maria said, the tiny school in Chiapas before couldn't get any information, and now they have it over the internet. Obviously, they're very specific problems, but in our country, in an educationally developed country, having more access to information isn't necessary. It's not going to solve any problems unless it's accompanied by an increase in the understanding of that information. So having all the information available, the only thing it does It just enables children to sort of cut and paste fantastically. They don't really understand anything, but they can, you know, generate fantastic essays. But what we haven't learned to do is to apply this to the learning process. We haven't, Microsoft has. So for what is very frustrating for education systems at the moment is the fact that the pedagogic talent is at an all-time low. We're repetitive. We're falling into habits. And anyone who's seriously investing in learning systems, not because they're ideology, not for ideology, but because it's a major business opportunity. And who are they? They're the large companies. Google, for example. Google wants to become the educator of everyone in the world. Samsung is spending a lot of money, but they're not really worried about content. They just want, you know, make sure that people have their machines. Microsoft is investing a lot of money in a computer app of schools, which is going to happen. It's going to appear very soon. And this personalized digital tutors. The Canuten system enables you to give each student their own program that will accompany their learning, which will adapt the programs to that child, to their characteristics. And they can actually get more than 80,000 pieces of data a minute to know how that child learns, so that they can become a kind of customized mentor, tutor. Is this good or bad? Well, I don't know. We need to think about this. Is it good or is it bad? I don't know. Because at the first, it looks great. No, at first glance, everything's advantages. It's all just a series of advantages, but we'd have to see how it actually works in reality. What am I concerned about? Well, that we need to decide what type of individual we want to actually form in the schools, so that they can use these marvelous, fantastic, also dangerous technologies that are coming and are coming very quickly. What type of individual do we want to actually create? Do we want to educate? And it turns out that we want an intellectually autonomous person, a person who is technically serious, and somebody with critical thinking. That's what we want, but the schools aren't doing anything like that at all. For example, we all talk about critical thinking. Well, I'd love to see in the universities in the US, I'd like to see them to assess their critical thinking, because they've established a kind of really strict censorship in which no one can criticize anyone. Why not? Because I'm not really interested in what anybody else thinks. I just want to give my opinion. So something that at the beginning seemed to be fantastic, everyone can state their opinion, has actually, actually ended up becoming a very dangerous kind of mental virus. So when I ask my postgraduate students at the university if all opinions should be respected, they say yes. And I'm like, hang on a minute. Why? Well, because of freedom of speech. And I said, I'm not talking about freedom of speech. I'm talking about the content of people's opinions. One thing is that everyone who has an opinion is respected, but what they say doesn't necessarily need to be respected. It could be stupid, it could be murderous, it could be blasphemous, it could be geared towards spreading hate. But when people at university have got their wires crossed and think that everything and all content should be respected and everyone needs to have a channel to express that, then I think that we have a real problem on our hands. And at this moment in time, what we need to do is to start thinking about what sort of individual do we want to actually have. And Daniel, in a number of his books, he said something that I think is very perceptive. Democracy, in order for it to work well, we need to create a democratic subject, and that's not what we're doing at the moment. So the thinking of critical thinking through the social media is a major and very serious problem. The problems that we have in Cambridge Analytics, what became clear in the Brexit elections and then in the Trump elections as well, is that it's based on very alarming studies. With 85 likes, you can define a person's psychological profile, including their political preferences, only with 85. And you can just paint a portrait of a person. And if I can paint your portrait, I can manipulate you. That's the problem with AI at the moment, is that it's been using for just two things, and that's robotization and social control. So we need to broaden the scope a little bit. Let's see how we can actually broaden the social use that it's made of AI. Because up to date, when we talk about the fact that we're living in the surveillance society, basically what we're saying is that AI has only been used to generate robots, and then for also social control. And it's fierce control. And I think this is where we need to have more talent in order to think about this, and we're not thinking about this. I remember in the Dartmouth conference, when we had people from the cybernetics world, they said that this is the technology and it's going to be called AI. And I think everyone agrees that there was a major mistake made there, because AI isn't, it's intelligent, it's neither intelligence nor is it artificial. But it needs a huge amount of energy. It depends on minerals, where there are wars, all that whole side of things that we really don't want to see. But it's not really intelligence either, because even though they're talking about the singularity and the fact that it's going to, become aware at some point, but actually it's sophisticated technology. It's in its spring, I believe. It's going through a burst of growth because of the different models that have been developed. We're going on a very, very sharp upward trend. Now, I'm not a prophet, but I think that in a couple of years' time, we'll be plateau. We're going to plateau, and we'll stop talking about AI. But it's a very powerful instrument and technology, but some are acting as if it was going to overtake us at some point in the future. Both pessimists and optimists coincide in thinking that artificial intelligence and human intelligence are the same thing. So pessimists think it's going to just take all our jobs. Optimists think that it's going to take our jobs and we're going to have lots of free time to do other things. But in reality, now, I don't know, José Antonio might want to say something about this because he's the expert. But what does it mean to be intelligent? The word intelligence refers to a lot of very diverse things. And I think maybe we're talking about the story of two different types of intelligence that don't compete with each other. In fact, could be complementary. The Wright brothers had a major leap forward in aeronautics. Why? Well, because rather than thinking like Leonardo da Vinci that aeroplanes should be similar to how birds fly, they studied aerodynamics. Because they just used the laws of aerodynamics. And maybe we're at a similar moment. So why do we still think that AI is a type of intelligence that competes with our own type of intelligence? Because there are some things that are specific to human intelligence that AI will never be able to do. We're very good as humans. I think we tend to underestimate human intelligence at the moment because we're so overwhelmed by everything. But human beings are unbeatable in certain areas of intelligence. To understanding of common sense, understanding of context, making decisions with very little information, handling uncertain and imprecise environments. We're very good at that. My brother, Javier, is here, so I'm going to tell you a little story about my mother. He might remember it as well. Maybe she just said it to me. In 1982, when the law of divorce was passed in Spain, she was really worried because she'd read in the newspaper that half of all marriages would break down. And I wanted to make her feel better and give her some positive information. So I said to her, well, I think that's a pretty good success rate, if you ask me, because if you look at the market study, well, it's not very good before you take the decision to get married. You don't really shop around very much, and you take it in a moment that you're madly in love. You're not really thinking properly. I'm afraid the sound seems to have gone. Okay, it's come back now. I didn't manage to make my mother feel any better, as Javier will remember, but I felt pretty good, and I think I'm right. Human beings have ways of thinking and ways of making decisions that are really good, but for some things. You talked about Minsky. Minsky says there are easy things and hard things. We do easy things really well, but machines find it really hard. And machines are really good at playing Go, chess, learning languages. Well, they learn language differently from us, but they don't understand a joke. They don't understand irony. The paradoxes, for example. So intelligence tests measure abstract things, but the most difficult thing for a machine or a robot is motricity in an unstable environment, moving around in an unstable environment. Is that better? I don't know if I need this microphone necessarily. And this probably is linked to the fact that developmentally, language has required less time than mobility. So humans have learnt language in a fairly brief space of time. I just wanted to give you another example. We've talked about the digital divide, and I wanted to defend digital migrants. I think almost all of us here are digital migrants. And we've got a bit of a complex, right? Thinking that we don't really understand this world, not as well as digital natives, etc. But I think we understand it better because we have lived in a completely analog world, and now we live in an analog digital world. So we know how difficult it was to do a doctoral thesis when we didn't have internet. And when you went I don't know, you went back to college with like 2 suitcases full of pieces of paper that you needed to study. You don't do that anymore. And this leads me to my next point, which has to do with education. Does it make any sense, really, to learn certain skills that we're actually not going to use later on? Does it make sense to do that? Do we need to learn the verbs in French? Or no in the Basque language? Or to add up, take away, divide, and multiply, when all of these things are going to be done by a machine? Well, I think, yes, it does make sense to do that. So we won't be able to use operations, like calculation operations, for example, or expression operations. We won't be able to do that unless we know what tasks technology is doing for us. So the process of learning of things that we're not going to use, we need to do that. If we don't understand what adding up is or what a word is, then how are we going to know what technology is doing for us? I'm going to defend AI. But let me start by what he was just saying at the end. What do we need to learn? A challenge that we have, those of us who work in education, those of us who need to design curricula, One challenge is that we need to base what we do on the premise that learning has to do with memory. Education is a construction of memory. But we've devalued memory. Because we're just saying that it's just a case of learning by rote. But in fact, memory does much more than that. It invents, it creates, it compares, it does all sorts of different things. So what we need to do is, first of all, to understand that learning is a function of memory. And secondly, we have huge memory banks that we can access very quickly and very cheaply. What do we need to do? We need to make sure that in every single thing that we learn, let's call them subjects, for example, in everything that we teach, what are children going to learn in neural format? What needs to be in their memory? So what needs to be in their actual organic memory, and what can be stored in the artificial memory, which is computers? And these computers are going to be increasingly customized as time goes by. So in each of these things, we need to select, and this is a really difficult task, but we need to select what we need to learn. I did it in a program focusing on economics, teaching economics to 16-year-olds. And the task was they had to take the concepts in the basic level economics books, about 600 concepts, to see if I could reduce them to 30 concepts, which is what these people were going to be able to learn in just 3 days. So you have to see that there are concepts that are key concepts, and these concepts are going to give you access to other concepts. But these concepts need to be in the head, in our organic memory, because otherwise they just won't understand anything that comes later on. So that's what we need to do. When if we're going to be sensible about this, we need to reformulate each and every subject to decide, okay, this is what you have to learn, but you have to learn it by heart. Because that's what's going to enable you. It's going to serve like a key that will enable you to unlock other knowledge in the future. And then secondly, when I started to write 30, 40 years ago, I said that abstract thinking was an exclusively human property, a property of human intelligence, but actually it's not. Artificial intelligence reserves form concepts, because a concept is the recognition of a pattern, which can be transferred to other solutions. And that AI can do that perfectly well. They do it very well. In fact, AI can detect patterns that we can't detect. The fact that at this moment in time, in medicine, for example, we are really relying on AI because it detects things that we don't know how it's actually detected. Well, I think this is a signal that it can see certain things better than we can. So people have said, well, AI will never understand a system. Or will never understand, jokes. But in fact, they do. It does. So even really sophisticated jokes, it can understand them. I started with one. I tried to write a computer program that would recognize, child's joke. Children need about 3 years to understand it. It says, I sell you a car. I sell you a car is the same in Spanish as I'm going to bandage you a car. And so the answer is, why would I want a bandaged car rather than a sold car? Doesn't work in English, unfortunately. But the program said, well, this is a joke, it's a word play. And people say, no, an AI doesn't understand it, doesn't really understand it. It's just a system of connections. But it has enabled us to really refine one concept, and that is that the way our brain works doesn't know what it's doing. So it's also a system of connections. incredibly rich. I don't know if you've seen the map that they've made of a fruit fly brain. It only just has 140,000 neurons. We have many, many more. But even so, it's an absolute chaos of connections. So I'm thinking about what I'm going to say at this moment. Yeah, and then I'm saying it. And this is what we're good at. So DeepDT is showing us that our brain works in a very similar way, but we have other advantages, is that we can reflect, we can analysis, etc. We can analyze. So we can do things, we can correct things and connect things. Danielle said something very important earlier. In order to be able to say something sensible about this, we need to define what intelligence actually is. So the theory of intelligence, which fits into the tradition of AI, is that intelligence is the ability to capture information, elaborate information to come up with an output that is able to solve a problem. That's a standard definition of AI, of intelligence in general, not just AI. And in fact, that's true. AI can solve many problems. But I'm not sure that's a good definition of intelligence, because that's just cognitive intelligence. And in the field of cognitive intelligence, we can't compete with AI. But our intelligence is not just cognitive intelligence. My proposal is that intelligence is the ability to direct our behavior well, not knowledge, not emotions, behavior. And there, AI has its limit. It can give us the perfect solution to a problem. For example, how to lose weight. It can give me a weight loss plan that's absolutely fantastic, but who's going to decide whether or not to follow the plan? Me. So for an AI system, in order to, if it needs to be able to fulfill all its capacities, then it needs to negate my capacity to decide. So the leap that it lacks is in action. So why are all these companies why are they working on persuasion? Because these machines are incredibly efficient and they can persuade us. Because what their cognitive intelligence is good at that. And why has it had such a major effect on our behavior? Facebook, for example, 2010. It introduces something which seemed very banal at the time, likes. What does a like mean? This means that we're going to be receiving small prizes or small punishments through our telephone, which are going to tell us whether or not we're being successful. And what that's doing is introducing something that was cognitive into a machine of persuasion, turning it into a machine of persuasion. When we were talking about super intelligence, it wasn't artificial intelligence, it was artificial will, really. So where is the will? Where does the will lie? Who's going to make the decision to act? Is it the artificial system or the people? And what we're seeing, and you can see it as a political scientist, in this disdain towards freedom all over Europe. They're saying they're not really worried about freedom. They wouldn't mind living in a dictatorship, assuming that their needs are satisfied. And then the rise also of authoritarian policies. There are people who say, I don't care. They can make decisions for me. I don't care. The moment that a person, I think when a person got 300 likes, that system knows that person better than their their wife, their husband, they know more things because the likes reflect their preferences. But in your everyday life, often we don't show our preferences. We just keep quiet just in case. So I think we need to see that where the real problem is, and it's philosophy that needs to come up with a solution to it, and it won't, because philosophy is at an all-time low. We've been infected with a virus. It's a virus that says, yeah, the only thing that's important is power. And that's not important. It's not, and truth isn't important. And it's not true, of course, but it's like a virus that has been injected into us, and it's just made us stop looking for the truth. This is the postmodern virus that's infected all of us. So we have woke thinking now, which is, I don't care what you think, and I don't want us to be the same. I don't want us to have the same rights. I want to be me, and I want to have power, and that's it. And that's really bringing about a very fierce, very harsh kind of culture where we actually have no opportunity to have any kind of criticism. So when we're talking about critical thinking, then if we want to develop critical thinking, we're going to have to do with philosophy, or we'll have to change philosophy, of course. Hey there, can you let me go back to talking about jokes? Because I think that's much more interesting than woke thinking. I don't necessarily agree with you totally. There's quite a lot of literature about jokes and AI and its limits and boundaries. I've read quite a lot about it. Not about jokes, but a little bit about jokes. I've reached the conclusion, and I don't want to offend anyone. I think that AI is like a Catalonian person, that you have to explain the jokes to it. A Catalonian person, they always said that they laugh 3 times when they're told a joke. I know it's a bit of a stereotype, but they laugh once when they're told it, once when they get it explained to them, and then once when they finally understand it. And what I'm trying to say is that there's a major difference between telling a joke and explaining a joke. It's the same difference between human intelligence and artificial intelligence, which is the implicit knowledge and explicit knowledge. Humans, what distinguishes us in relation to AI is that we are the masters of implicit knowledge. We have so much implicit knowledge that we don't explicitly explain, but it just is there in the background, and it's influencing certain decisions. This has to do with the cognitive plane. Unlike a machine that will need to know all sorts of facts and figures to get a coherent vision of the world. But as a human, as a parent, I don't need to tell my children what they have to do in every single situation. I either have to give them a set of general principles, and in the best case scenario, they accept it and then they apply it to their lives. A legislator and judges. I don't want to get into trouble here, but there are legislators and there are judges. Because we all understand that legislation isn't able to contemplate all possible situations. So you have judges who are in charge of interpreting the law. And this is what I was saying earlier. The strength of human intelligence is that we're very economic. from an environmental point of view, the neural expenditure that I'm doing at the moment is like a tiny little light bulb. The number of neurons that are on, they're very few. It's a very small part of the brain. I mean, I ate a couple of pinchos, a couple of snacks. Like 40 watt, it's a 40 watt light bulb. Okay. I had a couple of snacks at lunchtime, and we can be here talking till 10 o'clock at night if you want, on very little energy. We're able to make decisions, like, for example, getting married, with very few data. Because there's a technical part of knowledge, but there is different areas of uncertainty, but we still make decisions. So there's another example here. If I knew we were going to be talking about this, maybe I would have brought another example, because when you talk to Jose Antonio, you can end up anywhere in the intellectual world. But there's a photo, I would have brought it, but I explain this in class and everyone understands really quickly. There's a photo of a group of people who are going into a changing room, and there's like an old pair of scales. You have to stand up and you have to move the sort of the thing around. So someone's weighing themselves. Well, I think Trump's weighing himself, and Obama is gently pushing the scales down. And everyone around is just laughing. So you see the photo, and everybody understands really easily. But you have to explain a machine so many different things before it will understand what's going on. You have to say that generally humans don't like to weigh too much. The machine doesn't know that. You've got to tell that. Minsky said, is it possible to typify all the different situations that a machine might come across in its life? I don't think so. I don't think it's possible to do that for humans either. And they're not competing with us. And we have a major advantage. We just give them 4 facts. We can get a general idea. We don't need that explicit knowledge. So you've got to explain to the machine. We don't like to weigh very much. We don't have eyes in the back of our head. So the gentleman on the scales doesn't know that they're playing a joke on him. And in fact, it's the president of the United States. And everybody else is laughing. There's lots of things. It can understand it, but you have to tell it so many different things. And that's what I was saying. The humans have the ability to actually handle ourselves well in the metaphoric world, in the approximate world. I would just, you wrote, I don't know, a book called about praise or an elegy to, I can't remember what it was called. It was an authentic bestseller for a very important generation. But I'd like to write an elegy to approximation to the lives that we live as humans in the field of ambiguity and crisis, because that's where life is. Life doesn't, exist in precision and everything's precise and everything's exact. That's not where we live. That's not the environment in which we live. I agree with you. A machine doesn't understand jokes because it doesn't really understand anything. When it translates, the automatic translations, they're more and more faithful, but they don't know what they're translating because it's a machine. It's a blind machine that just calculates probabilities. There was a neurologist who said the only thing that our neural networks do is to calculate probabilities. But the important is that we recognize that the function of intelligence is to direct behavior, actions. And that's where we should be focusing our intelligence tests. Teachers, you're all here today, teachers. A lot of we've heard parents saying, oh, but my child's really intelligent. They just don't pay attention. They're really intelligent. Well, if they're not paying attention, that's their governance of their own behavior. So they can't be that intelligent. So it depends how you define intelligence. Because this child knows what they should do and they don't do it. So I think we have to insist that AI only exists in the cognitive field. It just basically handles data. But data only tell us about part of our connection with reality. The other part of our connection with reality comes from somewhere else, comes through other channels. Since I've been sitting here, I've been seeing that this floor is grey, and I'm thinking about whether I like it and I don't like it, but they're two very different things. So we can maybe stimulate that a machine can do certain things, but it has a problem in the field of values, because everything is based on experience. If we manage to get a machine that could feel pain and happiness, then maybe it would be able to evolve emotionally, and it would be more like us. But it only works at the moment in the purely cognitive field. And why do I find this interesting, Daniel? Well, it's because in education, what we need to do is reinforce and strengthen the subject, because the subject is dissolving. And when we talk about social media, a network has two different elements, the nodes and the ties that bind them. You might think that the connections are the most important things. No, in the social media, the nodes are the most important, because the nodes are people. So if you dilute the node, then you're doing away with people and subjects. That you're diluting this person into a series of relationships. So what does education need to do? It needs to have a clear subject. Rather have subjects that can just adapt really well. We need to have subjects with a clear, firm point of reference, because that's the point from which they're going to be able to level criticism or to defend themselves, etc. Because nodes are not passive subjects. They can stop things, they can analyze things, they can transmit, they can not transmit, or they can transmit something else. So what we need to do with our students and our citizens is to help them realize that being in the masses means that someone who's outside the state of mass, they don't lose their responsibility, but they do when they're in mass. With the network, much the same thing happens. If I'm in the network, then I'm just suppressing my entire ability to react, my critical capacity. So I need to move outside, because if I'm becoming diluted in the network, then it's because I want to be, and I can choose not to be. And this is the key point for me. We need to provide subjects with more resources so that they can understand how to live in the digital world, and understand that the digital world is very penetrating, that it penetrates your subject. And it's fantastic because it can solve many problems for you. The solutionism that you were talking about before. Well, that was the idea, that any problem can be solved if I have an application on my telephone. So I was in the University of Padres for 10 years, and everything that I had to read and learn when I was teaching, I didn't get them to learn anything. I just wanted them to develop their own ability to think and then to apply that to their own cases. And you can see that the students didn't want to read anymore. They just wanted an application. They said, well, can't you just give me an application and tell me what to do? And I said, no. Because if I were to do that, then I would take away the most important thing, which is to create your own personality. Let's go back to the issue that you're concerned about. When we're saying that the democratic system is not producing the type of people that it needs to function, well, this is what's happening. Because the democratic system is based on public opinion. And what you've just said is a series of very powerful mechanisms to manipulate public opinion, because that's the way to get to power. And this has just come up with a perverse effect. Democracy fosters manipulation because it's based on public opinion. And then we're really going in the wrong way. We need to go backwards a little bit, take a step backwards. We have subjects becoming weaker, they're becoming diluted, and all of this. And anyone who says that something is true, then, you know, they're a fascist apparently today. So let's just strengthen the subject so that they can be in the condition that they need in order to use new technologies. So we've heard a couple of times that you're not quite sure what we're measuring, right? This is what you've said. There's a major debate, the whole issue of indicators, measuring things. This is a battleground. In Kuna, we have a great project about measuring and sustainable development goals and how to measure them, for example, but bringing that to artificial intelligence. Alan Turing, when he came up with his famous Turing test, so that we could decide whether what we were looking at is a human or a machine. Or artificial intelligence. I think this really highlights two types of problems. One, that the idea that intelligence or machine intelligence is similar to human intelligence. Yeah, I think that I see clearer and clearer as time goes on that it's not. AI will advance, maybe becoming more similar to us, but I think it may, and I definitely think it's going to develop in parallel to us, not in competition to us. But it also, this whole idea of competition is wrong, because it just creates panic. In the social and employment world, this just means that we see innovation as automation. So that's it. Your job's going to disappear. You'll be replaced. We're thinking in terms of replacement. The extreme right, the far right, looks at immigration not as an issue that has to do with rights or governance. It just sees it as a major invasion. They're coming here to replace us. And there's a similar way of thinking in our relationship with technology. It's like a technological replacement of humans. I defend this in a book that I've just finished. I argue that humans, we can't see ourselves as something different from technology anymore, from many, many different perceptions. Technology is in our bodies, it's in our lives, it's in our subjectivity. But to go back to Turing, why was Turing wrong? And why is he measuring it wrong? One, because the interesting thing is not to know in what machines are similar to us, but how they can complement us. And second, he's measuring abstract capacities of calculation. And he doesn't measure, and I agree with you here, José Antonio, he doesn't measure what, from our point of view, is a paradigmatic of human intelligence. And that's the ability to resolve a social problem, a communication problem. Elemi said we need to calculate. But no, rather than the Turing test, I think we'd have the Durham test, which is subjecting whatever to just solving the climate change problem. If it can, if it can solve the climate change problem, then that's fine by me. That would be great. And what I don't agree with you is that if you just go to the cognitive field, then anything that we can do, AI is going to be able to do. If it finds a solution, if we do find a solution to climate change, it's going to be thanks to AI. And the same with vaccines. We have vaccines because we've got AI. The problem is, the problem of climate change will be solved not when we know the solution, but when we actually put that solution into practice. That's when real intelligence will come about, when I put the solution into practice. So here, intelligence is linked to ethics. Ethics isn't some strange thing. Ethics is let's follow the line of the intelligence that's able to find a solution and then put them in practice. So ethics is basically the best set of solutions that we can come up with for social problems. And if they will work if I put them into practice, rather than just staying in the cognitive plane. In fact, I remember one of the greatest advances in the 1980s in the field of machine intelligence. Robert Shang came up with his theories of script. So he wrote a script so the machine knew the following. So it's the script of someone who goes into a restaurant. So they go into a restaurant, they ask for the menu, they choose, they eat, and in his script, and they pay, of course, but in his script, this is the script. A person goes, eats, leaves, and the waiter runs out after that person. What happens? And the machine says they haven't paid. Now, this is a major step forward. We thought it was fantastic. Yes, the machines understood that. They've given them a script. And if we introduce something in the script, the machine would understand what happened. More or less what we would do. But the complexity of this situation was fairly low, but we can complicate the situations more. So the impression that it gives is that the machine will be able to, sort itself out fairly well in different complex situations, which is why I say again, and I'm insisting on this, is that the importance of intelligence lies in action, not in the cognitive plane. That's something else, and we need to measure it, and it's fantastic, and it's a fantastic world, and it's great and wonderful. But if we don't put what we know into practice, then it's not intelligent. So we're not being intelligent in the climate field, even if we knew the solution. Now, I could be here for hours and hours talking with you, but I think that these people might need to go to sleep at some point. You have a radio program. I've just looked at my watch, and I think it started a while back. So what shall we do? Shall we just leave it there? Shall we? I'm really sorry. I know we've run over, but we will be back. Thank you very much indeed to all of you.